All right, picture this for a second. Three young orphan sisters, Pushpa, Kajari, and the youngest, little Rupa, suddenly find themselves having the absolute worst day of their entire lives. They're being threatened with eviction from their home. But it's not just about losing a roof over their heads. It's so much worse than that. They are facing an entire village that harbors this deep, unexplained, and just totally venomous hatred toward them. Literally, no one will help them. No one will even speak a kind word to them. So that brings us to the massive question at the heart of this whole thing. Why would an entire village exile three completely innocent orphans? I mean, what could these young girls possibly have done to deserve such intense cruelty and isolation from their very own community? It's a puzzle, right? And it's one that haunts the sisters just as much as it intrigues us. As we unpack this explainer today, we're going to see how a hidden past can completely poison a community with guilt by association, and how incredible resilience can ultimately bring the truth to light. Okay, let's dive into part one, the eviction, forced out into the storm. Right, so first thing in the morning, the village sarpanch, who is the local leader, the guy supposed to protect the vulnerable, shows up at their door absolutely furious. He totally ignores their pleas for mercy and just ruthlessly kicks these three defenseless girls out of their home, right as a storm is rolling in. Now, on paper, his excuse is that the sisters owe 4 months of rent. But here's where it gets really interesting. The middle sister, Kajari, notices something super chilling. As they're being thrown out, the sarpanch has this distinct, cruel smile on his face. Kajari realizes that even if they had the cash for those 4 months of rent, he was going to evict them anyway. This wasn't about the money at all. It was deeply personal, kind of hinting at a much darker animosity just brewing beneath the surface. Moving right along to part two, building a new home, resilience by the river. So they're cast out, right, as this terrifying, massive black storm is rolling in. The sisters flee the hostile village and head deep into the jungle to a small clearing by the river. And the mechanics of their survival here, it's just a total testament to human ingenuity. They quickly gather jungle wood and leaves, binding them all together with wet river mud to form the walls of a small hut. But when the violent storm hits that first night, their makeshift leaf roof starts leaking horribly. Do they give up? Absolutely not. They learn from it. The very next morning, the second the rain pauses, they harvest thick, heavy river mud and create this massively reinforced, waterproof layer over their roof. Actually, scratch that. They didn't just build a shelter, they built a literal fortress of resilience. Which brings us to part three. The village's dark secret. Whispers and rejection. Now, desperate for work and finally having a safe roof over their heads, the older sisters swallow their pride. They go back and ask the sarpanch for help, even offering a cut of their earnings. Instead, every single door in the village is slammed right in their faces. And this hostility, it's not just silence, it's active malice. When they try to figure out what they've done wrong, they're met by village women throwing these venomous taunts at them, saying they must suffer for the sins of their parents. The whole village is holding on to this dark, unspoken secret about the girls' deceased parents. Pushpa and Kajari are left completely bewildered, doing their absolute best to hide this painful social rejection from their innocent younger sister, Rupa. Running completely out of options and literally facing starvation, the sisters take a massive risk. They go to visit the wealthiest man in the village, Seth Shyamlal. And this creates a really bizarre contrast. See, Shyamlal is widely known around town as a cruel, greedy guy. The sisters expect the absolute worst. But when they arrive, he acts like a total savior. He eagerly welcomes them, calls them the daughters of the village, and immediately hands them an advance payment and steady work. For the first time, their lives actually seem stable. But, as you'll see, things are rarely what they seem. All right, part four, surviving the Great Flood. Nature levels the playing field. Well, suddenly, a catastrophic weather event totally flips the script between the orphans and the cruel village. Let's trace how fast this escalates. Day one, a torrential, non-stop rain begins. By day four, the rain hasn't paused for a single second, and the lower-lying village is entirely submerged in a devastating flood. Homes are completely destroyed. The very villagers who mocked the sisters, including the proud sarpanch, are forced to run for their lives to the high ground in the jungle. And guess who happens to have a perfectly reinforced, totally dry, waterproof home waiting on that high ground? Yep, the three sisters. The irony here is just absolutely staggering. The villagers are left out there shivering in the rain, and their survival is now completely dependent on the very girls they ruthlessly exiled just weeks prior. And what did the sisters do? They don't seek revenge. They don't laugh at them. No, they repay the village's bitter hatred with life-saving kindness. They open the doors of their mud hut and take everyone inside to safety. And this leads us to the final chapter, Part 5, Truth and Hidden Treasure, the final revelation. As the floodwaters finally begin to recede after days of just pure devastation, the emotional walls of the villagers completely crumble. The Sarpanch, utterly humbled and overwhelmed by guilt over how these sisters just saved their lives, finally breaks his silence. He reveals the dark secret. Years ago, when the girl's father was the village Sarpanch, the sacred temple jewelry went missing. The entire village was led to believe that the girl's parents were the thieves. When the sisters hear this, they immediately reject it. No way! They refuse to believe it because they remember their parents vividly. They were raised on the strict path of truth and dharma, righteousness. They know in their bones their parents could never commit such a sin. And this brilliantly illustrates the real turning point of our story. Just as the sisters are passionately defending their parents' honor, a voice rings out from the crowd of sheltering villagers. An old, frail man steps forward. It turns out, it's the former temple priest who had vanished years ago. He looks at the crowd and says simply, "They were truthful." He is finally here to clear their names once and for all. So the priest breaks down the shocking true story. The real thief? It was none other than Seth Shamlal, the wealthy guy who had just employed the sisters. Shamlal was supposedly the father's best friend, but he stole the temple treasure and masterfully framed the parents for it. The priest was the sole witness to the crime, but Shamlal threatened his life, forcing the poor guy to live in hiding, completely in disguise, for years out of pure terror. Now, this completely changes how we look at Shamlal's earlier kindness. Why did he really employ the girls? Was it out of the goodness of his heart? Absolutely not. The priest reveals that Shamlal never actually found the full treasure. He knew the girl's father had somehow managed to hide half of the stolen loot from him before passing away. Shamlal only took the girls in because he greedily believed they knew where the missing half was buried. He just wanted to keep them close to extract that information. So what do? The village formulates this brilliant trap. See, Shamlal, being a total coward, had fled to the safety of the city during the floods. So the villagers execute a 3-step sting operation. Step 1, they leak false news to the city that the second half of the treasure has finally been unearthed. Step 2, they wait. They know Shamlal's insatiable, predictable greed will completely override any caution he has. And it works like a charm. Shamlal rushes back to the village expecting riches, only to hit Step 3. The entire village is waiting for him at the square, ready to hand him right over to the police. A perfectly self-destructive end for a greedy man. Okay, with Shamlal caught, there's just one piece of the puzzle left. Where on earth is the rest of the treasure? Suddenly, Pushpa remembers this vague memory of her mother talking about the village heritage being hidden right in their home. They all rush to the courtyard of their old rented house, the exact same one they were evicted from. They excavate the ground, and boom, there it is. The remaining temple treasure is unearthed and rightfully returned to the temple, completely restoring the honor of the sisters' family name. In the end, karma really does catch up, and the truth always prevails. The sisters' lives are completely transformed after this. The village, deeply ashamed of how they acted, now looks at them with immense respect and love. They're given excellent jobs with great pay, and they continue to live happily in their sturdy, self-built home by the river, forever proud of their parents' true legacy. So, what does this all mean for us? It leaves us with a pretty powerful reflection. When you're faced with unjust hardship, will you respond with bitterness, or will you build an unbreakable foundation like the 3 sisters? I mean, they had every single reason to be bitter, every reason to just let the village drown. But they chose grace and resilience instead. They built an unbreakable foundation, both literally with their river mud hut and morally with their character. It's just a striking reminder that how we respond to the storms in our lives, whether they're made of rain or made of unjust hardship, truly defines who we are. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.